Hello everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict Monitor. Please subscribe and like my videos. We begin with the exterior scene. On the surface, the regime of President Alexander Lukashenko in Belarus appears to have maintained a firm grip on power for decades. The architecture of authority is visible in the wide boulevards of Minsk, the imposing government buildings, the omnipresent banner images of the president, and the heavy presence of security forces on the streets. The national flag of Belarus waves above official buildings. Its colors and symbols reflect the identity that the regime promotes. The visible facade shows a state apparatus that projects continuity and control. At military parades, one sees columns of the armed forces marching in formation, tanks and armored vehicles rolling across public squares, and uniformed officers standing at attention. These external signs serve both as spectacle and message. The regime wants to show strength, discipline, loyalty. On the international stage, Lukashenko presents himself as the guarantor of stability, a bulwark against chaos, a leader who can hold the country together while navigating between East and West. Yet beneath that veneer, cracks are now showing. While the exterior still projects order, the underlying systems of loyalty, command, and power are shifting. Indicators of unusual movement among senior military officers, changes in command appointments, rumors of dissent within the armed forces, all of these suggest that the apparent stability may be deceptive. Furthermore, the international environment is putting added pressure. Belarus's geopolitical position between Russia, the European Union, and Ukraine means that any disruption in Minsk reverberates far beyond the country's borders. Thus the exterior narrative is one of a state still in control, of a leader still claiming legitimacy, but also of a stage upon which the drama of internal challenge is now being played. Now turning to the interior, the internal dynamics of the regime, the power centers, the relationships and forces behind the scenes. This is where the real story lies and where the video must dig deepest. Inside the corridors of power in Minsk, the heart of the matter is the relationship between Lukashenko himself, his security apparatus, and the senior military leadership. For decades, Lukashenko has held tight control over the armed forces, the interior ministry, the secret services, and has used them to maintain his rule. But in recent times, senior generals have grown restless. Some are reportedly unhappy with the regime's direction, its dependence on Russia, its economic troubles, its international isolation, and perhaps most importantly, its inability to provide a credible path for the future of the country. A key aspect is loyalty. Commanders are expected to obey orders, support the regime's narratives, and maintain cohesion. But what happens if the generals begin to question whether their loyalty is being reciprocated? If they sense that the regime is weakening, or that their own interests and status are threatened, the logic of survival may prompt them to act. We're hearing reports that some generals in the Belarusian armed forces have begun to refuse certain orders or to delay implementation, raising concern among the leadership in Minsk. The very fact that such reports are circulating is telling. In a closed authoritarian system, rumors of military dissent are serious. Inside, there may be maneuvering among different factions, pro-Russia elements, those who favor a more independent Belarusian path, officers who feel sidelined or face uncertain futures, younger commanders who may feel that a change is needed. At the same time, Lukashenko has been reshuffling military posts, dismissing senior officers, appointing loyalists, classic internal management tactics meant to keep control. For example, one senior officer previously serving as Chief of General Staff, Viktor Gulevich, held that post until May 2024. But such moves may also undermine morale and provoke backlash. The interior paragraph must emphasize the dense texture of relationships, the military culture, the patron-client system, the overlapping interests of the security services and the presidency, the loyalty networks extending into regional commands, the economic dimensions, military budgets, armaments, Russian subsidies, the external pressures, sanctions, Russia's war in Ukraine. Belarus's role as host for Russian forces, and the sense among some officers that the regime's survival is no longer guaranteed. The regime may treat dissent as a threat to national unity, but when generals begin to calculate their own futures, the internal logjam becomes acute. Reports of unofficial negotiations, whispers of possible defections, of units refusing to deploy, or of senior officers signaling that they will not follow certain orders all suggest that the regime's internal cohesion is fracturing. Moreover, the opposition in exile, the diaspora and foreign actors are watching closely, which in turn raises the stakes for the generals. Any move they make will be visible externally, and the risk of reprisals is real. So, the interior is a crucible of power. The presidency, the army, the security services, regional commands, all locked in a high-stakes game. The question becomes, when does loyalty break, and when does the regime lose the ability to enforce its will? In short, the interior of the crisis is far from static. It is fluid, unpredictable, and deeply consequential for Belarus and its neighbors. Next, we examine performance, the actual actions, behaviors, events that are playing out. In recent days, we have seen indicators that the generals are not merely complaining in private but taking steps. Whether that is publicly acknowledged or not, there are reports of high-level meetings being postponed, troop movements being delayed, orders being questioned. For instance, some units may be refusing to move into certain positions, or senior officers may be refusing to appear in state media, or are being quietly removed. The regime has responded with dismissals and warnings of traitors and saboteurs. The public performance of power is being challenged. The spectacle of loyal troops marching in formation is still there, but behind the scenes the chain of command is showing signs of strain. The way the crisis is being managed is also performance. Lukashenko's public statements emphasize unity, discipline, and readiness. His state media broadcasts convey the message that the military remains loyal and disciplined, but the contrast between the message and the underlying reality creates tension. On the other side, the general's performance is caution. They are not yet publicly declaring a coup, but their inaction and delay are meaningful. The message is, we can withhold cooperation if necessary. That kind of silent defiance is difficult for the regime to handle because it undermines the aura of total control. We may also see nonviolent measures. Units may be repositioned, commanders removed, regional commands may signal neutrality, the flow of intelligence may be disrupted. Performance is not just about big dramatic gestures, it's about the small signs of deviation from the norm. And from the regime's perspective, every skeptical commander or disgruntled unit is a performance risk. If they break fully, the spectacle of military order collapses. The overall performance of the crisis, therefore, is showing a system under pressure, a leadership acting to tighten control, and insiders starting to test the boundaries of obedience and surprise. Now we turn to safety features, but in this case the safety features equate to the safeguards and the risks, the built-in protections of the system, and conversely the flaws that may threaten stability. In an organization like the Belarusian their armed forces and security services, safety features typically involve multiple overlapping security and intelligence organs, loyalist networks, internal purges, strong ideological control, extensive surveillance, heavy state media messaging, and the presence of foreign patrons such as Russia. These are mechanisms by which the regime tries to insulate itself from internal threats. So from that angle, Belarus had built quite a robust safety net. The security services, including the internal troops, KGB legacy, and paramilitary units, are everywhere. The military is closely tied to the presidency. Regional governors, party officials, and military commanders are screened for loyalty. Economic incentives and patronage networks keep key figures invested in the system. On the flip side, the risk side is growing. If the internal safety features fail or are undermined, the regime could face major instability. The fact that high-level generals are reportedly challenging orders means that one of the core safety features, military obedience, is eroding. Should the military split, the safety net vanishes. There's also the external risk. If foreign powers, for instance Russia or others, exploit the instability by offering support to one faction, then the internal tensions may spill into open confrontation. And there is the risk to civilians. In a regime crisis, we might see breakdowns in law and order, regional commanders refusing to obey directives, possible defections, and a spiral of miscommunication. So the safety features of the regime are both internal command loyalty, surveillance, patronage, and external alliances, economic support. But the moment a military leadership begins testing boundaries, those safety features may no longer guarantee stability. Therefore, the safety features in this story are that the regime still has loyal structures. But the pending risk is that those structures might fracture, which would undermine those features entirely. Let us now discuss the unique selling points of this story, why this matters, why this moment is significant. First, we rarely see senior military leadership in authoritarian states openly or semi-openly challenge the head of state. That already makes this story stand out. Second, the geopolitical significance. Belarus sits at the intersection of Russia and Europe, as well as its role in the context of the war in Ukraine. A shift in its internal power dynamics has implications far beyond its borders. Third, it raises questions about loyalty, military professionalism, and the stability of regimes built on patronage rather than institutional legitimacy. Fourth, for viewers internationally, this is a vivid case study of how internal elite dynamics, rather than just mass protests, can pose serious threats to authoritarian rule. Fifth, this could signal potential change for Belarus, whether that means a softer authoritarianism, more independence from Russia, or greater internal turmoil. It is a turning point. Sixth, from a news media perspective, the visuals, the intrigue, the heist, takes gamble by generals, the uncertainty, all add drama and relevance for a broad audience. These unique selling points show that this isn't just another protest story. It is a possible tipping point for a country long considered stable under an iron-fisted ruler. Now to the price. What is at stake? What will be paid if the scenario continues or escalates? For the regime, the price is huge. Loss of military loyalty could mean loss of physical power, control of the arsenals, coup risk, fragmentation, and the opening of the regime to either collapse or transformation. For the generals, the price is also high. They risk purges, exile, charges of treason, and the unknown of what happens if the regime fights back. For the people of Belarus, the price could mean instability, economic disruption, possible violence, suppression of dissent, or even civil conflict. For the region, the price might include increased Russian intervention, refugee flows, destabilization of Belarus's neighbors, and broader deterioration of security in Eastern Europe. For international actors, the price is the loss of predictability, the need to adjust diplomatic and security strategies. In short, the price includes risk to lives, to regime survival, to national and regional stability, and to the future direction of Belarus. The currency of this price is loyalty, power, legitimacy, stability, and the cost is potentially very high. Finally, in conclusion, we've seen how on the exterior the regime in Belarus projects strength and continuity. We've looked inside at the internal friction between Lukashenko and his military leadership, where the loyalty networks are being tested. We've viewed the performance of the actors, the generals who may be withholding cooperation, the regime's moves to reassert control. We've analyzed the safety features that the regime built and the weakening thereof. We've identified the unique selling points of this moment. It matters internationally, historically, politically. We've looked at the price being paid by the regime, the military, the people, the region. So where does this leave us? The situation remains fluid. It's possible that the regime will reassert full control. perhaps through dismissals, arrests, or by bringing in external support including from Russia. It's possible that the generals will press their advantage, create a new power center, negotiate a deal, or force Lukashenko into concessions. It's possible that this unrest could trigger wider unrest in society, possibly drawing in opposition forces and foreign actors. What to watch now? Movement of military units, statements by senior officers, any resignations or defections, changes in command structure, unrest in cities or regions, Russian involvement or reaction, how the international community responds. The tipping point might already have been reached, or it may still loom ahead. For viewers interested in global conflict, this is a moment to watch closely. If the generals in Belarus lose confidence in Lukashenko, the entire balance of power in the region could shift. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. Until next time at World Conflict Monitor, stay informed and stay safe.